Welcome on my channel, The Narrative Nest. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Let us know in the comments how you feel about our stories. Now, let's begin today's mystery. It started with a strange email. Subject: he knows where she is. That morning in early September, Lauren Miles sat at the corner table of Calf Red Pine, fingers wrapped tightly around a warm paper cup. The scent of cinnamon and stale espresso lingered in the air. Her eyes, exhausted and sunken, fixated on her laptop screen, barely processing the blinking cursor. It had been 11 years since her daughter, Abigail, vanished from her room on a windy October night. 11 years of unanswered questions. 11 years of quiet guilt. 11 years of waking up hoping it was just a dream. But today was different. She stared at the subject line, hands trembling. The message was from an anonymous sender. No name. Just a string of numbers and a single sentence. He knows where she is. Go back to the lake house. Check the attic. Lauren blinked, rereading it again and again. Goosebumps erupted across her arms. The lake house. No one outside her family had known about that place. It had been her father's property, long abandoned. After the fire in 2004, they hadn't visited since. Her first instinct was to call the police. But what would she say? A random email told me to go to an abandoned cabin in the woods. She closed her laptop slowly, heart pounding, the dull roar of the cafe falling away as her mind spiraled back to that night. Abigail had been 6 years old, her hair always tangled from playing with the dog, her favorite stuffed penguin always tucked under her arm. That night, she'd begged Lauren to let her sleep in the living room to watch a Halloween movie. Lauren remembered saying no, gently, as always, then kissing her forehead before turning off the lights. The next morning, Abigail was gone. Her window open, her bed cold. No footprints in the yard, no broken locks, just gone. Lauren stood abruptly, the metal chair scraping against the wooden floor, earning annoyed glances from nearby patrons. She ignored them. She needed answers, even if it meant chasing shadows in a burned-out shell of a house. By late afternoon, the sun hung low and orange over the hills of upstate New York. The lake house, once a family retreat filled with laughter and fireflies, now stood like a forgotten corpse by the water's edge. Lauren parked her car on the gravel path and stepped out slowly, gravel crunching beneath her boots. The cabin looked worse than she remembered. Vines curling up its blackened walls, the windows clouded with dust and ash from the long-extinguished fire. She hadn't told anyone she was coming here as she approached the door. The smell of mildew and charred wood grew stronger. Her fingers hesitated on the rusted knob before turning it. The door creaked open with a sound like dry bones snapping. Inside, the air was stale. Faint outlines of furniture could still be seen beneath white sheets, moth-eaten and stiff. The old fireplace was crumbling. A broken picture frame lay on the floor, her mother's favorite photo of Abigail chasing a kite. Lauren took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm here, Abby." She moved slowly through the cabin, her steps tentative. Nothing in the downstairs rooms stood out. Just decay and silence. Then she looked up the attic door. She hadn't been in that attic since she was 17. It had always been sealed shut, more of a crawl space than a room. But the email had been clear. Checked the attic, dragging an old stool beneath. The hatch, she climbed up slowly, her muscles tensed with each movement. She pushed against the wooden panel, stuck at first, then gave way with a loud groan. Dust fell like snow as she peeked inside. The flashlight from her phone cut through the darkness. At first, nothing. Just a few boxes, cobwebs, then something. Glinted in the corner, a metal briefcase. She crawled in, her knees aching on the wooden beams. The case was small but heavy, locked with a 3-digit code. Lauren cursed under her breath. It could be anything or nothing. Then she noticed, scratched faintly into the side of the case were the numbers. 103, Abigail's birthday. She turned. The dial stopped click. The lock snapped open. Inside was a stack of old cassette tapes, a pair of headphones, and a crumpled note. The handwriting was unmistakable, her father's. If something happens to me, don't trust him. Start with tape 4. Don't go to the police yet. Lauren's breath caught in her throat. Her father had died in 2005. A heart attack, or so they said. Hands trembling, she loaded tape 4 into the small player tucked beneath the cassettes and pressed play. The voice was weak, strained. If you're hearing this, I'm probably already dead. My name is George Miles. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw that night. Lauren froze. Her father's voice sounded frightened. I didn't believe it at first. Thought it was just the wind or some drunk wandering near the woods. But when I saw that man take her, Abigail, when I saw him walking into the trees, like he knew no one would ever follow, I couldn't sleep again, not after that. The audio crackled. It wasn't a stranger. I recognized him. I've known him my whole life. A pause. It was my own brother, your Uncle Thomas. Lauren's blood ran cold. Uncle Thomas. The man who'd moved to Oregon just weeks after the disappearance, who never spoke of that night. No, that couldn't be. He'd helped with the search. He'd cried at the funeral service when they'd held a memorial in 2010. Lauren rewound and played it again. But the voice didn't change. Thomas, he knew things about our family, about what our grandfather did back in the 60s, about those rituals. I thought it was nonsense, old stories, but it wasn't. He said she had the mark, that Abigail was the final key. I begged him to explain, but he just smiled and said the line must be completed. He's building something beneath the lake. You have to find it before it's too late. Lauren felt like vomiting. This wasn't a murder. It wasn't a kidnapping. It was something worse. She grabbed the rest of the tapes, shoved them into her bag, and clambered down from the attic as fast as her legs could carry her. She needed to talk to someone, but who? The police wouldn't believe a woman claiming her dead father sent her messages about ancient rituals and underground bunkers. But someone might. A friend of her father's, Detective Marvin Reyes, had worked with him at the sheriff's office in the 80s. He'd gone private after retirement, working cold cases in his free time. Lauren found his number in her old address book. Her fingers hovered for a moment before dialing. He answered on the third ring. Reyes. Detective, this is Lauren. Lauren Miles. A pause. Then, Lauren, it's been years. How can I help? She didn't waste time. I found a tape. From my dad. He said Abigail was taken. That my uncle, I know. Lauren froze. What? I was hoping this day wouldn't come, Reyes said quietly, but I always knew it might. He gave her an address. Come to 1125, Boulder Pines Road. Don't bring anyone else. And Lauren, be prepared. There's a lot you don't know about your family. She hung up outside. The sky had turned dark. The wind off the lake chilled her to the bone as she stepped off the porch. A soft voice echoed from somewhere behind her. A child's voice. Mummy. She spun around, heart in her throat, but there was no one there, just the wind. The drive to 1125 Boulder Pines Road felt like something out of a dream. The kind where the shadows move faster than the light and every turn leads somewhere unfamiliar. Lauren's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The cassette player sat on the passenger seat beside her, its plastic surface warm from the attic heat. She hadn't dared listen to the other tapes yet, not alone, not until she was with someone who might understand. Marvin Reyes had been retired for over a decade. In his time, he'd built a reputation for following gut instincts others ignored, and for solving cases others gave up on. Her father used to call him the ghost hound, because he never stopped chasing shadows. Now Lauren needed him to chase one more. The GPS led her down an unpaved road flanked by pine trees, until she reached a rusted gate with a cracked wooden sign, Boulder Pines Wildlife Preserve, no trespassing. She hesitated. This couldn't be right. Then the gates buzzed and slowly creaked open. She drove in, following a gravel path that wound through the dense woods. Eventually, a cabin came into view, smaller than the lake house, but sturdy, its lights glowing warm. Against the falling dusk, Reyes stood on the porch waiting. He hadn't changed much. Grey beard, worn leather jacket, posture stiff but steady, like someone who hadn't forgotten what it meant to stand guard. Lauren parked and stepped out. "Still drink tea?" he asked. "I could drink lighter fluid right now and not notice." He gave a dry chuckle and led her inside. The cabin smelled of cedar and tobacco. A large desk dominated the far wall, stacked with folders and dusty binders labeled "Missing Persons, 1980 to 2010, Occult Symbols, Upstate NY and Miles Family, Restricted." Reyes poured 2 mugs of tea and sat opposite her. "Start from the beginning." Lauren pulled out the cassette recorder and set it on the table. "I found this today, in my grandfather's attic. Tape 4, it's my dad. He says my uncle took Abigail." Reyes's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't speak. "And not just that. He said something about a mark, a ritual, something being built under the lake." "It sounds insane." "I know, not insane," Reyes interrupted. "Not to me." He opened the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a file marked confidential -1992. "I started this years ago," he said, "after the original investigation went cold. Your father came to me privately in 2003, said he'd seen something strange, thought he was cracking under grief at first. But the more he talked, the more it made sense." He spread the photos. Across the desk, aerial shots of the lake, maps with grid markings, photographs of symbols carved into trees, stones arranged in unnatural patterns, half-submerged ruins barely visible beneath the lake water. "You've heard of the Sunwood cult?" he asked. Lauren shook her head. "They were active in the 60s. A backwoods sect claiming to protect a sacred bloodline. Most people dismissed them as hippie nonsense, but they left behind a trail of missing children across 3 states. He tapped the photo of a symbol, a circle of thorns surrounding a child's silhouette. They believed in chosen children, kids born with a spiritual mark they called the bridge. The cult's leader, Elias Miles, was your grandfather." Lauren reeled back. "No, that's not possible. My grandfather died before I was born." "He was a banker, not a he was both," Reyes said. "Outwardly, he ran businesses, but underground. He built structures, hiding places, places for rituals. I think your father eventually found one." Lauren couldn't breathe. "I thought my dad was losing his mind," she said quietly. "He stopped sleeping. He used to go on these walks at night, muttering to himself. And he and Uncle Thomas, they stopped speaking." Reyes nodded. "That's when George came to me. He said Thomas was rebuilding the old faith, that he'd taken Abigail because she was born under the same stars as Elias's first vessel, a perfect alignment." Lauren's hands trembled. "Then we need to go to the police." Reyes shook his head. "And say what?" "A woman got an email telling her to check an attic, found a 20-year-old tape, and now thinks her uncle is running a cult under a lake. They'll lock you up for psychiatric evil." She laughed bitterly. "He wasn't wrong." Reyes picked up the cassette recorder. "May I?" She nodded. He loaded tape 1 and pressed play. Journal entry, November 5th, 1991. "My name is George Miles. If you're hearing this, it means I've failed. I've begun finding things near the lake. Symbols, bones, scratches, inside trees that look like eyes. I believe they're watching us, watching her. Lauren is too young to understand. But Abigail, she was born under a blue eclipse. I didn't think that meant anything until I read Elias's journal. He said a girl born on a moonless tide could open the pathway beneath. I thought it was metaphor. I don't anymore." Lauren pressed her hand to her mouth. "My dad knew. This was coming." Reyes nodded. "And he left you a map. He just didn't call it that. He spread out all the photographs and scribbled notes. Tapes 2 and 3 filled in the gaps. Stories of rituals held beneath the lake, of children who disappeared during the 70s and 80s, of tunnels accessible only by a specific inlet on the west side of the property. "We go tonight," Reyes said. Lauren stared at him. "Are you serious? We may not get another chance. And if Thomas is still alive, if he's still down there, your daughter might be too." Lauren's breath hitched. It had been 11 years, 11 birthdays missed, 11 Christmases, 11 sleepless nights, but some part of her, a small, desperate ember, had never stopped hoping. She nodded. "Then let's go." It was nearly midnight when they reached the lake's edge. The moon hung low behind thick clouds, casting the entire shoreline in shadow. Reyes led the way with a military-grade flashlight. Lauren followed close behind, clutching the crowbar he'd handed her from the back of his Jeep. "You sure about this inlet?" she whispered. He pointed toward the half-submerged stone pier. "That was used for deliveries. There's a tunnel under it, just wide enough to crawl through." Lauren's stomach turned. They approached the old pier. The water sloshed softly beneath it, black and still. Reyes crouched down, pried open a moss-covered trapdoor, and revealed a ladder descending into darkness. "This is it," he said. Lauren peered down. The air rising from below was cold and metallic. She descended first, her fingers slipping slightly on the rusted rungs. Reyes followed, sealing the trapdoor behind them. The tunnel was narrow, lined with wet stone and rotting wood beams. It sloped downward at a slow angle, and soon the sound of dripping water echoed louder than their footsteps. After 10 minutes, they reached a fork. Reyes checked the notes again, left toward the echo chamber. They walked in silence. Then they heard it, a voice, distant, faint, singing. A lullaby. Lauren froze. "I know that song," she whispered. It was a tune she used to hum while brushing Abigail's hair. An old nursery rhyme. Her hands began to shake, uncontrollably. They turned a corner and saw it. A room hidden beneath the lake, filled with pale candlelight. In the center was a circle drawn in salt, symbols surrounding it. And in the middle sat a girl, long blonde hair cascading down her back, humming the lullaby. Lauren's vision blurred. "Abigail," she whispered. The girl turned, but it wasn't Abigail, not quite. Her eyes were entirely black, and she smiled. "Hello, Mummy." The girl's voice echoed through the stone chamber, bouncing off the damp walls like a whisper from somewhere far beyond this world. "Hello, Mummy." Lauren stumbled backward, heart slamming in her chest. Her breath came in short gasps. Behind her, Reyes raised the flashlight higher, casting the eerie circle in harsh white light. The salt glistened. The symbols, angular, sharp, and unnatural, seemed to squirm at the edge of vision. "No," Lauren whispered. "You're not. You can't be." But the girl smiled wider, tilting her head like a curious bird. "It's okay, Mummy," she said, voice as soft as falling snow. "You came back, just like Daddy said you would." Reyes took a step forward, placing himself slightly in front of Lauren. "Who are you?" he asked, voice calm but edged with steel. The girl looked at him. Her smile didn't falter. "You know who I am. You both do. You just don't remember." Her hands rested in her lap, folded neatly. She wore a pale white nightgown, too clean, too perfect for a place so cold and rotted. Around her, dozens of small wooden dolls sat in a ring. Their painted eyes stared outward. None of them had mouths. Lauren's knees buckled slightly. "Abby," she choked. The girl blinked slowly. "That's not my name anymore." A sound echoed from deeper in the tunnels. A wet scraping, footsteps. Reyes turned sharply, pulling a revolver from his coat. "We're not alone," he muttered. Lauren forced herself forward, staring at the girl. No, at the thing wearing her daughter's face. "You're not her," she said. "You look like her, but Abby didn't have black eyes. She didn't talk like this. You're something else." The girl's smile faltered for the first time. "I was her," she said, before the door opened. A low hum filled the room, at first imperceptible, but growing, vibrating in their bones. Reyes moved to pull Lauren back. "We need to go now." But the girl stood, and the salt ring caught fire. Flames burst from the circle, swirling upward in a spiral of heatless blue light. The wooden dolls ignited instantly, their limbs twisting in the fire like they were alive. The girl stood perfectly, still, untouched. Lauren screamed. The humming became a voice, deep, guttural, and in a language no one should understand. The flames reached the ceiling, then collapsed inward, vanishing as suddenly as they appeared. When the smoke cleared, the girl was gone. Only the charred remnants of the dolls remained. Reyes pulled Lauren toward the tunnel entrance. "Move." They ran. The tunnels behind them groaned. Stone dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere, a pipe burst, spraying rusty water in an arc. When they finally emerged from the ladder and into the open air, Lauren collapsed on the ground. Gasping, coughing, shaking, Reyes slammed the trapdoor shut and jammed it with the crowbar. What the hell was that?" she said, voice raw. Reyes didn't answer. He knelt beside her, checking her pupils, her pulse. "That was not a girl," he finally said. "That was something else. Something wearing your daughter's skin." Lauren's body convulsed, but her voice, she knew things. She said Daddy said I'd come back. "She might be in there," Reyes said gently. "But whatever Thomas did down there, Whatever he unleashed, it's twisted her. Lauren stared at the dark lake, the reflection of the moon rippling with each breeze. Tears streamed down her face. Is she still alive? Reyes hesitated. I don't know, but I think there's a way to find out. Back at the cabin, Reyes cleared his desk and spread out the rest of the materials, taped transcripts. Elias Miles' journal pages, a half-burned letter recovered from the lake house in 2005. Lauren sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, rocking slightly. She hadn't spoken much since they returned. Reyes lit a cigarette, his first in years, and flipped open a dusty notebook. The bridge must be broken with blood. He tapped the underlined phrase with his pen. In every version of these rituals, the cult described a key, a child with specific traits, born under specific stars. The child is meant to open something, but once opened, the door doesn't close, unless the bloodline is cut. Lauren stiffened. You're saying, if she's still alive, fully alive, there may be a way to bring her back? Reyes said carefully. But if she's already inhabited, then you'll have to make a choice. She stood, her voice ice. I am not killing my daughter. I'm not asking you to, Reyes said. I'm asking you to understand the scale of what's happening. You saw that thing down there. That wasn't human. And if it gets out, the knock at the door was so soft they almost didn't hear it. Reyes froze. Lauren looked up, heart thudding. The knock came again, deliberate, 3 times. Reyes moved to the door, gun raised, finger off the trigger. Who is it? He called. No answer. He opened it an inch. There was a man standing on the porch, completely naked except for a burlap sack over his head. A symbol was painted in black across his chest, a circle with lines pointing in 6 directions. Reyes pulled the door wider, gun trained on the man. Who sent you? The man didn't answer. He dropped something on the ground, a small red cassette tape, then stepped back into the darkness without another word. He turned and walked into the woods. Lauren rushed to the doorway, eyes wide. Is he gone? Reyes nodded. Lauren picked up the cassette. No label, just a red shell, slightly melted at the edges. They played it. This is Thomas Miles, the voice began, calm, collected. If you're hearing this, I assume you've found her, or what's left of her. Let me explain. Lauren's hands clenched into fists. The Sunwood Doctrine was never about worship. It was about survival. Elias saw what was coming, the thinning time when the walls between worlds would tear. The bridge child is the anchor, and Abigail was the last. I did what I had to do. You can hate me, you can hunt me, but it won't matter. The girl you saw in the chamber is not Abigail. She's the door. Reyes stopped the tape. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Lauren stood slowly. I'm going back, she said. Reyes looked up. You can't. She's still in there. That thing is using her as a doorway, but part of her, part of my Abby, is alive. I saw it in her eyes before they turned black. Reyes shook his head. It's too dangerous. You go back in alone. You won't come out. I'm not going alone. She held up the last tape, the one her father had labeled, do not play unless you're ready. She pressed it into the player. Lauren, George's voice said, older and more broken. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can save her, that you're stronger than the darkness, and maybe you are. But remember, light only wins if it fights, before the door opens. Once it opens, it doesn't shut. unless you choose. Lauren stood in the center of the room, her face pale but her eyes focused. The final tape, her father's desperate message, still echoed in her ears. Once it opens, it doesn't shut. Unless you choose. The meaning hung in the air, like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. Choose what? She whispered. Reyes sat back in the chair, the smoke from his cigarette curling lazily to the ceiling. He was warning you, warning me to do what? To kill her, burn the tunnel, destroy what's left of her soul. Reyes didn't respond. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a worn manila folder. It was brittle, the paper yellowed. He laid it on the table. Typed on the cover in faded ink were the words Sunwood Doctrine, Termination, Protocoloran. Stomach turned as he opened it. The first page held a diagram, a circle of fire, surrounding a child's silhouette, just like the one burned into the lake tunnel floor. But this version was overlaid with Latin phrases. At the center, underlined twice, one word, Sacramentum. What is this? Lauren asked. Reyes looked up, eyes tired. A ritual created by a splinter faction in the 70s. People who left the cult, but still believed in the threat. They wanted to build a way to sever the connection between the host and the entity inside. You mean an exorcism? Reyes shook his head. No, an execution. One that traps the entity instead of killing it, binds it, locks it away permanently. Lauren stared down at the drawings, her mind reeling. You said there might be a way to bring her back. There might be, if we perform this right. Exactly, if she's still in there. If the entity hasn't completely taken over. Lauren's voice cracked. And if it has, Reyes hesitated, then all you'll be doing is killing the door before it opens any wider. The next morning, they returned to the lake. Sunrise barely broke through the clouds. A cold mist rose from the surface, like steam escaping a boiling wound. They didn't speak. Lauren carried a small duffel bag with the supplies Reyes had gathered overnight. Salt, iron shavings, ashes from a burned Miles family heirloom, a bone-handled dagger, and most importantly, the original Sunwood Doctrine. A battered copy handwritten in Elias Miles' own scrawl. Reyes carried the revolver. They reached the trapdoor and opened it, descending once more into the suffocating dark. The air inside the tunnels felt heavier than before, like something knew they were coming as they walked. The flicker of candlelight appeared again up ahead. The room was exactly as they'd left it. Only now the burnt wooden dolls had been replaced. Hundreds of them, each identical, each facing inward toward the salt circle. And at the center, sitting calmly with her legs crossed, was the girl. She looked up as they entered. Her eyes were no longer black. They were a pale blue Abigail's. Real eyes. Hi, Mummy. Lauren froze. Abby. The girl tilted her head. You came back. I told them you would. Reyes raised the revolver, but Lauren grabbed his arm. No. The girl stood slowly. She looked fragile, real, her nightgown dirtied, hair tangled. Lauren stepped forward, eyes filling with tears. Abigail, do you know who I am? The girl nodded. You're my mother, and do you remember what happened? The girl hesitated. Sort of. It's like being underwater. I hear things, see things, but I can't move. I think the bad man put me here. Thomas, Lauren said. The girl flinched at the name. He said I had a gift, that I could bring them through, but I didn't want to. Lauren moved closer. Abby, we're going to fix this, I promise. But the Girl's expression changed in an instant. The softness drained away, and her mouth curled into a smirk. Too late. The floor shook up from every tunnel. Dozens of figures emerged, cloaked, hooded, barefoot, eyes glowing faintly with unnatural light. Lauren screamed. Reyes raised the gun and fired. The closest figure dropped, not with a scream, not with blood, but like a puppet whose strings had been cut. They weren't alive. Reyes grabbed Lauren by the arm. Start the right. Lauren dropped the bag and tore open the doctrine pages. Her hands moved fast, pouring the salt into the circle, reciting the incantations, drawing the sigils in ash and iron. The girl stood still, watching her with interest. One by one, the cloaked figures stopped moving. They stood in a perfect circle, forming a second ring round the salt. Lauren reached into the bag and pulled out the dagger. The final step. Blood must seal the sacrament. She looked at her hand, then at the girl. Abby, or what looked like her, stepped forward. "You'll have to choose," she said, voice layered with something deeper now. Something ancient. Lauren raised the blade to her palm, but the girl stepped into the circle and her body jerked, eyes rolled back, limbs twitching. She collapsed to her knees, screaming, a sound that tore the air. Reyes moved to grab her, but Lauren stopped him. The light in the room changed. The candles flickered out. The girl lifted her head, eyes once again black, and spoke in two voices at once. "You would cage me. You would seal your daughter's soul inside a prison. Let her suffer in silence for eternity." Lauren's hands shook. "Let her go, or kill her," the voice said. "That's what this is, isn't it? A mother, choosing to save the world, or save her child, but not both." Lauren held the dagger. Her father's words echoed again. "Choose." Her daughter's body convulsed. "Mummy," Abby whispered. Tears ran down Lauren's face. She stepped forward and drove the blade into her own hand. Blood dripped onto the circle. The salt hissed. The symbols caught fire. The entity screamed, a howl that collapsed stone, shattered candles, and made the robed figures writhe and burn where they stood. Abby's body floated upward, twitching violently. The salt ring burned brighter white hot, then snapped closed. Like a bear trap, the body dropped, silence. When Lauren opened her eyes, Reyes was at her side. The room was gone, no dolls, no candles, just rubble, and her daughter, unconscious but breathing, in her arms. She was free. Lauren didn't remember much about the climb out of the tunnels, just fragments. Blood on her shirt, Reyes pulling her up by the arm, the cold wind hitting her face as they emerged from beneath the lake house like survivors of a bomb blast, and Abigail limp in her arms, skin clammy but warm, breathing but shallow, her hair matted, her nightgown damp and soiled. They didn't speak during the drive. Reyes focused on the road while Lauren stared out the window, holding her daughter's hand. She felt like if she let go, even for a second, Abigail might vanish again, like she had 11 years ago. When they arrived back at Reyes's cabin, the sky was turning pink with early dawn. Birds stirred sleepily in the trees. Everything was still. Quiet, too quiet. Reyes carried Abigail inside and laid her gently on the couch. He checked her pulse again, then motioned to Lauren to follow him into the kitchen. "She's stable," he said. "Whatever you did in that ritual, it worked. The entity is gone, but her body, her mind needs time." Lauren nodded slowly. She was shivering, but not from the cold. Will she remember? Eventually. Maybe not all of it. Maybe just fragments. That could be a mercy. Lauren poured herself a glass of water. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't even think, she said. I cut my hand. I thought it had to be hers. I thought that was the sacrifice. Reyes lit a cigarette and exhaled through his nose. The doctrine was clear. Blood seals the path. But it never said whose. Your blood, her mother's, might have been the only thing strong enough to sever the tether without destroying her. Lauren stared into the glass like it held answers. So she's really free. Reyes didn't answer right away. She's alive. That's more than we hoped for. But something's bothering me. What? He opened a drawer and pulled out the red cassette tape, the one delivered by the burlap-masked stranger. I've listened to this tape 5 times since you brought it back, he said. And there's a background frequency. Something under Thomas's voice. Lauren leaned in. What kind of frequency? Like a hum, a distortion. At first, I thought it was tape damage. But then I filtered it, slowed it, cleaned it. He placed an old portable speaker on the table and pressed play. The familiar voice of Thomas Miles echoed through the cabin. If you're hearing this, I assume you found her, or what's left of her. Then, faintly beneath his words, a sound rose, almost imperceptibly. Lauren's skin pricked lead. It was a heartbeat. Rhythmic, deep, slow but not human. It sounded too big too ancient and it was getting louder. Reyes hit stop. Whatever was coming through that girl, it wasn't acting alone, he said. It was just the gate, not the thing behind it. Lauren sat down hard in the chair, so we didn't stop it. Reyes stood, rubbing his temples. We bought time. But this heartbeat, it means something else is still connected, still watching, still waiting. Later that night, Lauren sat by Abigail's side. The little girl's eyes fluttered beneath closed lids. She murmured now and then, broken words, names, fragments of lullabies. Her body twitched once every few minutes, like something inside was trying to get out, or trying to settle back in. Lauren ran her fingers gently through her hair. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not leaving you again. Abigail didn't respond, but her hand moved just slightly and gripped Lauren's. The next morning, Reyes was outside chopping wood when he noticed something odd at the tree line. A circle of stones, freshly arranged, too perfect, not random. He crouched and examined them. In the center was a symbol scratched into the dirt, the same one from Elias Miles's doctrine. The seal of the bridge. Someone had been here recently, and then, from somewhere deep in the forest, came a sound that stopped Reyes cold. The same hum from the tape. But this time, it was coming from the earth itself. He backed away slowly. They weren't alone, inside the cabin. Lauren found a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. It hadn't been there the night before. She unfolded it carefully. You delayed the opening, but the door is not broken, and the key still lives. Return her, or more will vanish. There was no signature, no origin, just ash on the corners of the paper, as if it had been pulled from fire. Lauren's hands went numb. She read it again. The key still lives. She looked at Abigail, and then a thought struck her like a slap. What if the ritual didn't sever the tether? What if it just pushed it deeper? That night, Lauren dreamed. She was back in the tunnel, only now the walls were breathing, softly, rhythmically, like lungs inhaling stone and exhaling rot. She followed a corridor that hadn't been there before, drawn toward a sound, a whispering in a language she didn't understand. It led her to a mirror, black as obsidian, and inside it she saw herself, older, hunched eyes like cracked glass, and beside her a grown Abigail, but not human, her skin stretched too tight, her eyes voids, and behind them both, a figure colossal, shaped like a man, but made of darkness and bone. Its mouth opened. Lauren woke up screaming. Reyes was already awake, rifling through papers. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "We've got a problem. What now?" He slid a newspaper across the table. It was an obituary. Local family found dead in their home. Parents and 3 children. All windows boarded from the inside. Symbols burned into the floor. No signs of forced entry. Lauren stared at the photo. The house was just 6 miles from the lake house. "They're accelerating," Reyes said. "Whoever's left, whoever still follows the doctrine, they know the seal is weakened. They're opening smaller doors, preparing the ground." He turned to Lauren. "And they're going to come for Abigail again." Lauren felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "We need to run," she said. Reyes shook his head. "No, running won't stop this. We need to find the source, the true door, and we need to burn it down before they try to finish what Elias started." Lauren turned to the window. The woods looked still, but she knew better now. Something in them had woken up, and it was coming. The forest was lying. It looked quiet, as always, a blanket of green under a rising summer sun. But beneath the canopy, the silence had changed. There were no birds this morning, no wind, no insects, just the slow, almost imperceptible feeling of being watched. Lauren could feel it pressing down on her. She sat at the edge of the cabin porch, Abigail sleeping in the hammock beside her, Reyes pacing near the tree line with his binoculars. His movements had become more erratic since the nightmare 2 nights ago, the one he refused to talk about. But Lauren had seen it in his eyes. Whatever he'd dreamed, it had followed him into the daylight. She took a deep breath and tried to focus. Abigail had finally started speaking again. A few scattered sentences, disjointed memories. She remembered being somewhere underground, a circle of stones, a man with no face. But when Lauren asked what the man said to her, she went silent. Then she started drawing. Dozens of small sketches in the notebook Reyes gave her. Always the same image, a towering figure with antlers like trees and arms too long. For its body, sometimes it had a child on its shoulders. Sometimes it was pointing at a door made of bone. Always the same symbol behind them, the Miles seal, the bridge mark. Lauren flipped through the notebook now, trying not to panic. Something was building, a pattern. Reyes finally spoke. "I know where it is." Lauren turned. "Where what is?" He held up a worn, folded map, a topographic layout of the Miles' ancestral land stretching back to 1874. "There's one location no one's ever investigated. Off-grid, not on the county records. The trees are older than the roads around them. I only found it after cross-referencing the old doctrine coordinates with your father's aerial photos." He tapped a spot circled in red. "Miles Hollow." Lauren frowned. "I've never heard of it. That's the point. They scrubbed it." Reyes turned the map toward her. "There's something buried beneath this valley. Your grandfather, Elias, called it the Chamber of First Breath. That's where the original door was built. The ritual chamber your father never found." Lauren stood slowly. "And you think it's still there?" "I think it's waking up." They left at dusk, leaving Abigail behind in the care of a trusted neighbor from town. A woman Reyes knew from his sheriff days. One of the few people who didn't flinch when you said words like cult or possession. Lauren hesitated before leaving, but Abigail looked at her with clear eyes and whispered, "I'll be okay, Mummy. Just come back." It felt like a goodbye. The forest closed in as they drove deeper into the hollow. Following the old dirt path Reyes found on a survey map from 1923, no GPS, no reception. Just paper, instinct, and fear. After an hour of hiking through tangled undergrowth, they found it. A stone archway, old, cracked, covered in moss and vines, but still standing. Symbols were etched across the top beam, not just the mile seal. Others too. Some that looked almost like musical notation. Some like ancient runes. One looked disturbingly like a child hanging upside down over a pit. Reyes knelt beside the entrance. There's something under this hill. Stone, not dirt. Like it was built hollow. He opened his backpack and pulled out 2 lanterns, a revolver, and a small wooden box. Inside were 4 sticks of C4. Lauren raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. "I believe in holy fire and modern explosives." They stepped through the arch. The ground felt wrong. The deeper they went, the colder it got. And the silence, it wasn't empty anymore. It throbbed. They found the first sign of life about 20 minutes in. A wooden totem hung from a tree branch, carved with dozens of children's faces. Their mouths were sewn shut with wire. Lauren almost threw up. Then they saw the campfire, still burning, recently used, and beside it a journal. Reyes picked it up, scanned a few pages, then handed it to Lauren. It was written in blocky, angry handwriting. "We are the last hand of the hollow. We prepare the path. The girl is not complete. She must return for the gate to fully open. The blood of the bridge is still hers. We wait, we sing, we cut. We wait." Lauren flipped to the final entry. Abigail was only the beginning. The others will come when the star bleeds again. There was a date tomorrow. They moved faster after that, deeper into the woods, until they found the hatch, an iron trapped door, half sunken into a ring of stone. It looked too modern for the rest of the structure, like someone had rebuilt it recently. There were fresh boot prints, a discarded glove, and beneath the hatch, faintly, they heard chanting. Lauren nodded to Reyes. He set the charges. They backed up 3, 2, 1. Boom, boom. The hatch blew open with a shriek of iron and a blast of dirt and fire. Smoke rolled out of the ground, and beneath it, stairs descending into darkness. Lanterns in hand, they went down. The chamber beneath was unlike anything they had seen before. Stone walls carved with spirals and eyes. A floor inlaid with gold lines, forming a massive sigil that pulsed gently with blue light. And in the center, an altar. On it, a child-sized coffin. Lauren felt her legs buckle. Abigail, but it wasn't her. It was another child, hair black, skin pale. Eyes closed, but the expression frozen in agony. A voice echoed behind them. "You came." They turned. Thomas Miles stood at the far end of the room, dressed in black robes, his hands covered in fresh blood. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes burned with clarity. Lauren stepped forward. "You did this. You took her. I saved her," he said. "And I'm trying to save all of us. But you keep interfering. You tortured her." "I prepared her," he said, "because one way or another, the door will open. The vessel must live, and now." He looked past them. "She's here." Lauren spun around. Abigail was standing in the doorway, eyes blank, mouth closed, hands clenched. Reyes cursed under his breath. No one followed us, but Abigail wasn't alone. Behind her stood 7 children, all dressed in white, all silent, all with symbols painted in blood across their foreheads. And Lauren realized these were the missing children from the past 4 decades. They weren't dead, they were waiting. The chamber went silent. 7 children, still barefoot, blood symbols on their foreheads, and Abigail standing in front of them, her nightgown torn, her face expressionless. Lauren's heart dropped into her stomach. Reyes raised his revolver without a word, pointing it toward Thomas Miles. But Thomas didn't flinch. He just smiled. "You can't kill what was already promised," he said softly, his eyes locked on Lauren. Lauren stepped between Abigail and Thomas. "Let her go. She's not held," Thomas said. "She came." Abigail tilted her head toward her mother. Her voice was soft, but echoed strangely in the room. "I had to see it for myself. The place Daddy talked about in the dark. The one that breathes." Reyes cursed under his breath. "That's not her talking," Thomas continued, stepping slowly around the altar. "We were wrong to take her before. The hollow was ready. She resisted, fought the old tongue. She's stronger than we knew, stronger than Elias thought." He looked down at the child in the coffin, unmoving, mouth sewn shut with golden thread. She was meant to be the first vessel, but her body failed. Abigail was the backup, and now he looked at the 7 children, arms raised like a priest before communion. They are the choir. Lauren backed up slowly, shielding Abigail. "They're just children." "They're keys," Thomas hissed. "Each born under the black moons, each marked. We've been gathering them for 40 years. You stopped us once, but now the gate's already cracked. The veil is thin." Tonight, boom. The ground shook. Above. They heard trees cracking, screams, not human ones. Reyes ran to the edge of the room where the stone met carved brick, the old path leading even further downward. "Lauren," he said grimly, "look." She moved to his side. Beneath the altar was a spiral staircase leading into a deeper pit. On the walls, carvings writhed under the lantern light like they were alive. They weren't symbols anymore. They were stories, scenes. Children being lowered into wells, adults kneeling before shadows with antlers, flames rising from a lake, and at the center, at the very bottom of the spiral, an immense door, not stone, not metal, but something organic, flesh-like, pulsing, live. Lauren nearly fell to her knees. Reyes held her up. "That's the real gate." Thomas was already descending the steps. "You can still stop this," Lauren called after him. "You don't have to finish what Elias started." He didn't turn. His voice came back up the tunnel. "It's not about Elias. It never was. He was just the first to listen. But the voice came long before him, and now you will all hear it." Reyes pulled Lauren aside. "We blow the stairwell, collapse the tunnel. But the children are already gone," Reyes said. "They're empty, Lauren. Whatever was in them, ... It's below us now." But Abigail was still standing, still silent. Lauren knelt in front of her. "Abby, listen to me. You're stronger than this. You beat it once. You can again." Abigail's fingers twitched. A tear ran down her cheek. "It's inside the dirt now, Mummy. It crawled into the roots. It wants to wear the sky." Lauren clutched her shoulders. "But it can't. You hear me? We won't let it. She turned to Reyes. The doctrine, what does it say about sealing? The first gate. He shook his head. Nothing useful, just warnings. Seal with fire, bind with bone, circle in pain, burn the name. Lauren looked at the symbols etched into the coffin, the ones the cult had used to open the door. What if we reverse them? Reyes blinked. What? Undo the markings, desecrate the sacred site, defile what they built. She looked back toward the pit, where Thomas had nearly reached the organic door. Destroy the choir's harmony. The plan came fast. Reyes rigged the altar with his remaining explosives. Lauren used the golden dagger from Reyes's satchel, an old Miles heirloom, to carve counter-sigils into the pillars around the chamber. Abigail stood by her mother's side the entire time, silent but present, and as Reyes lit the fuse, Lauren shouted into the pit, "You're not opening anything tonight." Thomas's scream echoed up like a howl from hell itself, and then crack. The entire spiral stairwell collapsed, swallowed by fire and stone. A shriek rose from below, something massive, something ancient. It rattled their bones. The children dropped where they stood, eyes rolling back, mouths open in silent agony. Lauren grabbed Abigail and ran. They barely made it out before the final detonation shook the hollow. Trees split, birds burst from the treetops in terrified flocks, and the earth caved in. A sinkhole swallowed the archway. The forest screamed. For one long, terrifying moment, the air tasted like blood. Then silence. Just the rustling of trees. The gate was sealed, back at the cabin. Lauren wrapped Abigail in a wool blanket. Her daughter was quiet, tired, but herself. Reyes sat nearby, wrapping his ribs from a fall during their escape. "It's over," Lauren whispered. But Reyes didn't look convinced. He opened a notebook and scrawled something on a blank page. Lauren looked. It was a date. April 8th. "What is that?" She asked. "The next black moon," he said. "We bought time, that's all." He pointed at Abigail, now sleeping peacefully on the couch. She still marked Lauren, and the ones who followed Elias. Not all of them were in that chamber. Lauren looked out the window. The woods were dark again, but not empty, never empty, and deep in the soil. Something still listened. 3 months later, the town of Granfield was still. A late summer fog crept through its streets, muffling the world in grey. No birds, no dogs barking, just silence. The kind that pressed into your ears and whispered that something was wrong, but couldn't quite say what. Lauren sat at the edge of Abigail's hospital bed, her daughter's fingers resting lightly in hers. Machines beeped around them. Monitors flickered with green lines. Tubes and IVs traced down Abigail's arms like vines. She hadn't woken up since that night in Miles. Hollow. The doctors said it was a coma, stress-induced catatonia. One neurologist called it. Her brain's protecting itself. But Lauren had seen what happened. This wasn't medical. This was warfare. A battle inside her. Daughter's mind, and Lauren didn't know who was winning. Reyes stayed in town, unofficially, working under the radar. Quiet investigations, surveillance, interviewing families of the missing, digging into property records from the 1960s. What he found scared him more than anything beneath the hollow dot. There were more children, not just 7, not even 10. There had been dozens, scattered across different towns, foster homes, communes. Some adopted, some institutionalized, all born on the same lunar alignment, under a sky with no moon and no stars. and almost all of them were gone. Some listed as runaways, others disappeared from locked rooms, a few simply vanished. "Someone is collecting again," Reyes said one night, spreading documents across Lauren's coffee table. "But they're not after Abigail anymore. Not directly. She's too risky now. Too powerful." Lauren looked up from the couch, eyes sunken but alert. "So what do they want?" Reyes didn't hesitate. "They want her blood. A piece of her. That's all they need to start again." It started with the phone call. Unlisted number. A voice that sounded mechanical, masked, genderless. "You're running out of time. The key can still open the veil. Choose now, or the earth will be harvested." Click. No trace. No source. Just that voice. Harvested. The word lodged in Lauren's chest like a nail that night. Lauren dreamed again. She was back in the tunnel beneath. The hollow. Only this time, it wasn't stone, it was bone. The walls were made of skulls, grinning in the flickering torchlight, and ahead of her, Abigail, not 6 anymore, but older, maybe 16, maybe older still. Her back turned, her hair long and braided with vines. She was speaking in a strange language to something behind the door. Lauren tried to scream, but she had no mouth. She woke in sweat, and Abigail's hospital monitors were flatlining. Nurses rushed in. Alarms blared. Lauren stood paralyzed in the corner. But just before the crash, Cart arrived. Abigail's eyes opened, and she spoke one word underneath. Then she flatlined again. Reyes didn't ask questions. He packed gear, weapons, maps. "I know what she means," he said. "I thought it was collapsed, but there's a second chamber, beneath the hollow, older than Elias, older than any of us." Lauren refused to stay behind. She wouldn't lose her daughter again, so they returned. The second chamber was hidden beneath the ruins of the first, buried under layers of concrete, sealed behind rusted steel. Reyes found the path through old mining, blueprints that Elias had altered. The cult had used it long before Thomas ever reached the upper tunnels. They descended for hours and then found it. The cathedral, a massive underground cavern, lit not by fire or electricity, but by luminescent roots growing from the ceiling like chandeliers. In the center, a throne of stone, and seated on it was Elias Miles, still alive or something close, his skin grey, eyes milky white, but breathing, and in his lap, a book bound in flesh. He looked up and smiled. "You made it." Lauren froze. "You're dead." He stood slowly, his body cracked like ice as he moved. "I have been many things. Dead was just one of them." Reyes raised his weapon, but Elias ignored it. "You broke the first gate. That was expected. But you did not destroy the key. That, my dear, was your mistake." Lauren stepped forward. "She's just a girl." Elias's face twisted. "She is the girl, the last, the strongest, the one who can cross." He lifted the book and opened it. Pages of names, hundreds of them, all crossed out, except one. Abigail Miles. She doesn't need to die. She needs to become. Lauren lunged forward, but Reyes held her back. "He's stalling," Reyes whispered. "He doesn't have her. He needs you to bring her." But Elias just smiled. "No, she came on her own." And behind them, a voice echoed, "Mummy." They turned. Abigail stood in the doorway of the cathedral. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, the 7 children, eyes glowing, symbols burning bright. Reyes shouted, "Run!" But Abigail stepped into the chamber. Hands raised Dot, and Lauren saw it. The mark on her chest was glowing. Elias began chanting. The roots above pulsed with light. The walls quaked. And then the veil opened. Not a door, not a hole, just an absence, a tearing, a void that bled sound and color from the world. Reyes fired. The bullet passed through Elias. He kept chanting. Abigail began to float. Lauren screamed. And then she did the only thing left. She grabbed the book of names, tore it from Elias' hands, and stabbed herself with the golden dagger, hidden in Reyes's belt. Her blood sprayed across the pages. The book hissed, actually hissed, and burst into flame. Abigail shrieked. The other children collapsed. The void began to close, and Elias, he screamed a raw animal sound as the fire consumed him. His last words, "This is only the beginning." And then he was gone. 1 year later, Granfield returned to something like normal. The hospital discharged Abigail with a clean bill of health. Lauren bought a house on the coast. Reyes disappeared. Rumor said he was working with a Vatican paranormal team. No one ever found the hollow again. It sank like it never existed. But sometimes, Abigail wakes up at night, draws circles on the window, and whispers to someone only she can see.